I'm Chad Douglas. Our parent company, Sinclair Broadcasting and KHQA, continue to work for you, keeping you informed on complex political issues facing our country. Illinois Congressman Darin LaHood joins us now for this installment of Connect to Congress. He is with us via satellite from Washington, D.C. Good morning, Congressman.
Hey, Chad, great to be with you and your viewers today.
Good. Pleased to welcome you. We're going to talk a little bit about tax day. It's coming up here in just a few days. While most Americans have probably already filed, how concerned should people be in 2016 about identity theft through tax filing?
Well, we're having a hearing this week before my committee, the Technology Committee here, and we're going to have the IRS chairman there, the commissioner, to talk about cybersecurity. You know, there was a report that came out last year, Chad, by the GAO, the Government Accounting Office, that showed that cybersecurity and penetration of personal information at the IRS has gotten to a level that is not acceptable. Over 700,000 Americans have had their personal information compromised by websites related to the IRS. And so the hearing this week is going to talk about how do we make sure that that changes. You know, people get very frustrated with the IRS, and rightly so, but particularly when it comes to tax season, we owe it to the citizens, we owe it to our constituents to make sure that when that information goes to the IRS, that does not get compromised. And with any federal agency, whether it's the IRS or anything else, we as policymakers have to make sure that we are giving the IRS the necessary resources, which in this case we have, but we have to make these agencies make sure that they're efficient, effective, and accountable. And this is an issue that we're going to talk about with the commissioner. It's something that the GAO report said there are 43 recommendations that need to be implemented. And this isn't necessarily an issue with resources. We have given the IRS the necessary resources. Unfortunately, they've cut back with the number of cybersecurity folks they've had in their department. These are decisions made by them. But we have to focus on this issue, and I'm going to talk to the commissioner about that this week to make sure that we're putting in place the necessary mechanism to make sure we are not compromising people's personal security. This is an important issue.
Absolutely it is. Let's switch gears now to retirement. Just last week, the Department of Labor finalized its fiduciary rule, which imposes a series of mandates that will drastically alter how Americans plan for retirement. What can you tell us about this fiduciary rule?
Well, I'm absolutely opposed to the fiduciary rule. People need to understand this is a rule put forth by the Secretary of Labor, Mr. Perez, with the Obama administration. But really what this is circumventing the Congress and circumventing the Constitution. This is a rule that is being implemented by one department. This could never, Chad, people need to realize this could never go through the legislative process. This administration, the Obama administration, tried to bring it through the legislative process. It didn't go anywhere. So this is really legislating by executive order, which has been the pattern with this administration, whether it's the EPA, whether it's the Department of Labor, whether it's the IRS. It's really circumventing the Congress. But this has real world effects. State Farm is headquartered in my district in Bloomington Normal. I did a town hall meeting last week at State Farm. What this fiduciary rule means is it's going to add more compliance, more burden, more regulation on financial advisors. Now listen, you know, we need to look at issues where consumers are being affected, where, you know, if you have somebody who has a financial advisor that isn't giving them good advice, we absolutely need to deal with those things. But really what this does by rule, it blankets the country, it changes the definition of what a fiduciary rule is, but it means that your State Farm agent in Quincy, Illinois, or Peoria, Illinois, or Springfield, Illinois, is now going to have to change how they give advice, the mechanism they do that, and it adds legal requirements and lots more compliance. It's really taking a sledgehammer to a flea. That's the analogy I've used. It is the government overreaching and doing it by executive order. So we have passed a law already in Congress to repeal this rule. And again, it's an example of really a violation of the separation of powers, the Obama administration legislating through executive order. But people in this country are fine with a rule or a law, but it should go through a full, transparent, open process. Let's have hearings. Let's bring witnesses. Let's try to pass this. That is not being done here, and it's going to have real effects on people in my district and also businesses, and we need to be growing the economy in Illinois. This is something that's going to restrict growth in Illinois and all over the country.
Let's talk a little bit about budget now. Today, Wednesday, April the 13th as we're doing this, and Citizens Against Government Waste released its annual so-called pig book. What do you think needs to be done about wasteful spending in government, and is the pork the cost of doing business to get things done in Congress?
Well, we have a $19 trillion deficit. That is unacceptable. Being $19 trillion in debt is something that we should not tolerate. You know, I am still the newest member of Congress, but when I ran for Congress, I talked about everything that we look at in the federal government, every agency we have to look at, how we make government more effective, efficient, and accountable to taxpayers. When President Obama came into office 7.5 years ago, we had a $10 trillion deficit. We're at 19 now. That is unacceptable by any measure. And what's frustrating is people, you know, in my district, whether it's in your personal finances or whether you run a business, we watch our nickels and dimes every single day. And the federal government has to do that. You know, if you're a family and you don't have enough income coming in, what do? Well, you don't take a vacation, you get a second job, you get rid of cable TV, you get rid of a second car. We make do. That's what families do every single day in my district. We need to do that at the federal level. So I was very proud that I voted against John Boehner's last budget last fall. I also voted against the omnibus bill because they added to the deficit. I'm going to continue to be a watchdog when it comes to taxpayer money, making sure we're going the opposite direction when it comes to adding to our debt. We have to do two things: get the economy going, the private sector economy, bringing more tax money in and reducing our spending. That needs to be done across the board.
All right, final question for you this morning, Congressman. Presidential race. A recent poll shows that Bernie Sanders is the most likable candidate out there. How much do you think likability plays into elections?
Well, I think we need to focus on substance. We need to focus on who's going to move the country forward, who has the best ideas for doing that. You know, Bernie Sanders, while he might be a nice guy, is, you know, a socialist. I don't necessarily agree with his policies on that. I think we need to take a different direction when it comes to how do we grow the economy in this country? How do we, not at 1% growth, how do we get to 2 or 3% where we're creating jobs in Illinois and all across this country? That's what we have to focus on. So what we have to look at is not necessarily likability. Let's look at the policies. Let's have a debate on who's going to get the economy going, who's going to create opportunities for people all over this country. That's really what we need to look at, is how we're going to get America back on track. And that comes down to policies being put in place to do that, and hopefully we'll have a substantive debate on that moving forward.
All right, Congressman Darin LaHood, we appreciate your time this morning, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chad. Great to be with you.